The ship was dying. Matriarch Keshra knew this as surely as she knew her own name. Warning lights flashed red across every console. Smoke filled the corridors. And somewhere below them, an unknown planet grew larger and larger through the cracked viewport. "Brace for impact," she commanded, her voice steady, even as fear gripped her hearts. Behind her, 3,000 of her people prepared to die. The Vethkai had been running for 6 months. 6 months since the Dominion hegemony had declared their species unworthy of existence. 6 months since their homeworld had burned. They had begged 7 different civilizations for shelter. 7 times they had been turned away. No one wanted to anger the Dominion. No one wanted to risk war for a species of insectoid refugees with nowhere to go. Now their ship had failed them too. The engine had given out above an uncharted world in an unexplored corner of the galaxy. They would crash. They would die. And the Dominion would not even need to waste weapons on them. The impact was worse than Keshra had imagined. Metal screamed and tore. Bodies flew through the air. The world became nothing but noise and pain and darkness. When it finally stopped, Shura lay in the wreckage and waited for death to claim her. But death did not come. Instead, she heard crying. Her people were injured, bleeding, dying slowly rather than quickly. She forced herself to move. Her forelegs trembled beneath her. Her iridescent carapace was cracked in 3 places. But she was alive, and her people needed her. The ship had broken apart across a vast wilderness of trees and snow. Keshra had never seen snow before. It was cold and white and fell from a gray sky. The air was thin but breathable. The gravity was slightly stronger than home. They could survive here, at least for a while. She found Threnix pulling his clutch sister from the wreckage. The young female was badly wounded. Blue blood seeped from a gash in her thorax. Her compound eyes were dim with pain. "She needs a healer," Threnix said desperately. "Matriarch, please. She needs help." Keshra looked at the devastation around them. Their medical bay was destroyed. Their healers were either dead or injured themselves. She had nothing to offer this young male but the truth. "I am sorry," she said. "We have no help to give." She moved on, counting survivors, organizing what little rescue efforts she could. The numbers were grim. At least 400 dead, hundreds more injured. Their food supplies were scattered across the crash site. Their communication array was damaged but might be repairable. Not that it mattered. No one would come for them. No one ever did. Keshra ordered her engineers to attempt repairs on the communication system anyway. It was something to do. Something to keep her people busy while they waited for the cold or starvation or this. The planet's natives to finish what the crash had started. The communication array sputtered to life just as darkness fell. Keshra sent out a distress signal without hope. She stated their situation plainly. Refugee vessel. Crash landing. Survivors in need of assistance. She did not expect an answer. The answer came within an hour. Strange flying machines appeared in the sky. They made a terrible noise, like angry insects, but deeper. Lights swept across the crash site. Keshra gathered her able-bodied warriors and prepared for whatever came next. If this world's people wanted to kill them, they would not die without a fight. The machines landed. Creatures emerged. They walked on 2 legs and had soft skin in various shades of brown and pink. They wore heavy clothing against the cold. They carried equipment Keshra did not recognize. One of them approached slowly, hands raised and empty. It made sounds with its mouth. Keshra could not understand the words, but she recognized the tone. Calm, careful, non-threatening. More creatures arrived. Dozens of them. Then hundreds. They brought shelters and blankets and machines that produced heat. They brought containers of liquid and packages of food. Most importantly, they brought healers. Keshra watched in disbelief as these alien beings began treating her wounded people. They did not speak the same language. They had never seen Vethkai biology before. But they studied. They adapted. They worked through the night to save lives. She found Threnix sitting beside his clutch sister. One of the alien healers knelt beside them, working carefully on the young female's wound. The healer was a small creature, with dark fur on its head and kind eyes. It had been working for hours without rest, Why? Threnix asked, though he knew the creature could not understand him. Why are you helping us? The healer looked up at him. It did not understand his words, but something in its expression suggested it understood the question. It simply pointed to the wound, then made a motion with its hands. Fixing, helping, healing, as if the reason was obvious. As if it needed no explanation. Strenix's clutch sister survived the night. By morning, Keshra's engineers had partially repaired the translation systems. She could finally communicate with these strange beings. She learned that they called themselves humans. She learned that this world was called Earth. She learned that humanity had no knowledge of the wider galaxy. No contact with other species, no understanding of what they had stumbled into. She told them everything. The Dominion. The genocide. The months of running. The 7 civilizations that had refused them shelter. She told them that she was grateful for their help, but the Vethkai could not stay. They needed only to repair their ship, and then they would leave. They would not trouble humanity any further. The human leader listened carefully. Her name was Director Sarah Chen. She was a small woman with gray in her dark hair and lines on her face that suggested many years of difficult decisions. She asked questions through the translator. She took notes. She consulted with others through a communication device. Then she gave her answer. Leave. She said, Why would we let you leave when the people hunting you are still out there? Keshra stared at her. The translation must be wrong. She asked the system to repeat the words. The meaning was the same. You do not understand, Keshra said carefully. The Dominion hegemony controls hundreds of star systems. They have fleets of warships. They have already destroyed our world and killed billions of our people. If they learn you have sheltered us, they will come for you too. Your people will suffer for our sake. Director Chen's expression did not change. I understood you perfectly, she said. And my answer stands. You're not leaving until we're sure you'll be safe. Keshra had led her people for 40 years. She had negotiated with kings and emperors and council leaders across the galaxy. She had begged and pleaded and bargained for her people's survival. Never, in all that time, had she encountered anything like this. A species that had just learned they were not alone in the universe. A species with no fleet, no allies, no power to speak of in galactic terms. And their first response to meeting refugees fleeing genocide was to offer protection. It made no sense. It was the most beautiful thing Keshra had ever seen. She did not know how to respond. So she simply lowered her head in the Vethkai. Gesture of deep respect and whispered words the translator carried across the gap between their species. Thank you. To be continued, ... refugees. Crash landed on Earth by mistake. Humanity. Refused to let them leave. Part to the refugee camp grew larger every day. What had started as emergency shelters in the Canadian wilderness became something more permanent. Buildings rose from the snow. Power lines connected to human electrical grids. Roads were cut through the forest to allow supply trucks easy access. Matriarch Keshra watched it all with a mixture of gratitude and growing dread. The humans were kind. There was no denying this. They brought food and medicine and warm clothing adapted for Vethkai bodies. They sent teachers to work with the young ones, using pictures and gestures until the translation systems improved enough for real communication. Engineers arrived to study the damaged ship, not to steal its technology, but to help repair it. So you will have the choice, Director Chen explained when Keshra asked why. When your ship is fixed, you can leave if you want, or you can stay. But it should be your choice, not something forced on you by broken engines. Choice. The Vethkai had not had choices in a very long time. Threnix found himself spending more time with the humans each day. His clutch sister was recovering well under their care. The human healer who had saved her life visited often to check on her progress. Through gestures and slowly improving translation, Threnix learned her name was Dr. Amara Okonkwo. She had traveled from a place called Nigeria to help the refugees. Why? Threnix asked her one day. You came so far. You do not know us. Why did you come? Dr. Okonkwo thought about the question for a moment. Because you needed help. she said simply. That is enough reason. Threnix did not understand. In the galaxy he knew, no one helped strangers. Help was traded, bargained for, bought with favors or resources. Help was never free. He found a different kind of answer with Marcus Chen, the teenage son of Director Chen. Marcus had come to the camp with his mother and refused to leave. He was fascinated by the Vethkai, asking endless questions about their homeworld, their culture, their biology. He did not flinch when Threnix came close. He did not look away from Threnix's compound eyes or show fear at his clicking mandibles. Are we not frightening to you? Threnix asked. Marcus shrugged. My little sister is scarier when she's angry. It was a joke, Threnix realized. The human was making a joke. He tried to remember the last time anyone had joked with him. It had been before the burning. Before the running? A lifetime ago. Would like to meet this fearsome sister, Threnix said carefully. Marcus grinned. Maybe next week. Mom's bringing her to visit? Something warm settled in Threnix's chest. He was not sure what to call it. Hope, perhaps, or something like it. But Keshra could not afford hope. She spent her days trying to make the humans understand the danger they had invited upon themselves. The Dominion hegemony controls 347 star systems, she told a gathering, of human leaders through a video communication screen. They had come from all over the world, these humans. Leaders of different nations, speaking different languages. United only by their curiosity about the aliens who had fallen from their sky. They have warships beyond counting, Keshra continued. Weapons that can crack planets open like eggs. They have destroyed 17 species completely, erased them from existence, made it so that no one even remembers they lived. And they have declared the Vethkai their next target. She paused, letting her words settle. If they learn you have given a shelter, they will come here. Your world has no defenses against them. You have no fleet, no shields, no allies in the stars. They will burn your cities and enslave your people. All because you were kind to strangers. The human leaders were quiet for a long moment. Then a man spoke. He was old, with white hair and dark skin, and he spoke with an accent that the translator identified as South African. We know what it means to need help and not receive it, he said slowly. We know what it means to be told we are not worth protecting. Many of our nations have been refugees at some point in our history. We have been the ones others looked away from. He leaned forward, his eyes meeting Keshra's through the screen. We will not be the ones who look away. The vote was held 3 days later. Representatives from 193 human nations gathered to decide the fate of 3,000 aliens they had never met before. Keshra waited in the camp, surrounded by her people. Threnix stood beside her, his clutched sister leaning against him for support. They watched the broadcast on screens the humans had provided. Though they understood little of the many languages being spoken, the debate was fierce. Some humans wanted the Vethkai gone. They spoke of the danger, the risk, the foolishness of provoking a galactic power for strangers. Others argued just as fiercely for protection. They spoke of duty and morality and what it meant to be human. In the end, the vote was close. 112 nations voted to grant the Vethkai full refugee status and protection. 81 voted against. It was enough. Director Chen came to the camp personally to deliver the news. She stood before Keshra with a document covered in stamps and signatures. This is official recognition of the Vethkai people as refugees under international human law, she said. You have the right to shelter, safety, and protection on Earth. This cannot be taken away by any single nation or government. It would require another vote of the entire assembly. Keshra took the document with trembling hands. It was just paper, just words written in a language she was only beginning to understand. But it meant everything. You are fools, she whispered. Brave, beautiful fools. Director Chen smiled. We've been called worse. That night, the Vethkai celebrated for the first time since leaving their homeworld. They sang the old songs and told the old stories and allowed themselves to imagine a future that did not end in death. Threnix sat with Marcus outside the celebration, looking up at the stars. That one, Marcus said, pointing at a bright dot in the sky. That's Mars. We've sent robots there. Someday, we want to send people. Threnix looked at the tiny light. The humans had barely left their own world, yet they had chosen to stand against an empire that spanned hundreds of systems. Your species is very strange, Threnix said. Marcus laughed. Yeah, we get that a lot. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Marcus spoke again, his voice quieter. We're going to be okay, you know? All of us. We're going to figure this out. Threnix wanted to believe him. He wanted to believe that kindness could triumph over cruelty, that courage could stand against overwhelming power. He had seen too much to truly believe it. But sitting here, under alien stars, with a human friend beside him, he was willing to try. The celebration continued behind them. The stars turned slowly overhead, and somewhere in the depths of space, the Dominion hegemony received word that their prey had found shelter on a small blue world called Earth. They began preparing their response, to be continued, ... refugees. Crash landed on Earth by mistake. Humanity refused to let them leave part. 3. The probe arrived without warning. Human scientists detected it first. A small object, moving impossibly fast, appeared at the edge of the solar system. It slowed as it approached Earth, taking up position in orbit around the planet. It made no attempt to hide. It wanted to be seen, then it spoke. Every communication device on Earth received the same message at the same moment. Televisions flickered to static, then displayed an alien face. Phones buzzed with audio no one had sent. Radio stations went silent, replaced by a cold, harsh voice. People of this primitive world, you have been found harboring criminals of the Dominion hegemony. The species known as Vethkai are enemies of galactic order and must be surrendered for justice. You have 30 planetary rotations to deliver them to us. Failure to comply will result in the complete destruction of your civilization. There will be no second warning. There will be no negotiation. Comply or die. The message repeated itself in every human language. Then the probe went silent, hanging in the sky like a threat made solid. Keshra heard the message in the refugee camp. She listened to the words she had feared since the moment of the crash. Then she went to find Director Chen. She found her in the command center that had been built near the camp. Screens covered every wall, showing news broadcasts from around the world. Humans were panicking. Some were angry. Some were terrified. All of them were looking to their leaders for answers. I will surrender, Keshra said. My people and I will go willingly. You do not need to fight for us. Director Chen turned from the screens. Her face was tired, but her eyes were steady. That's not your decision to make, she said. It is exactly my decision, Keshra replied. We are the ones they want. If we go, your world will be safe. You have done more for us than anyone in the galaxy. We will not repay your kindness with extinction. And then what? Director Chen asked. The Dominion takes you, kills you. And what have we learned? That the universe rewards surrender? That we should abandon people when protecting them becomes difficult? She shook her head. That's not who we are. You will die, Keshra said desperately. All of you. Billions of your people. For 3,000 strangers you have known for less than a season. Director Chen was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft. Let me tell you something about humans, matriarch. We have spent most of our history being cruel to each other. Wars, slavery, genocide. We have done terrible things to our own species. And every time we have looked back and asked ourselves the same question. Why did no one stop it? Why did good people stand by and do nothing? She moved closer to Keshra. We have learned, slowly and painfully, that standing by is a choice. Doing nothing is a choice. And it is never the right one. We cannot control what the Dominion does, but we can control what we do. And we choose not to surrender innocent people to their killers. Keshra had no response. She had lived among humans for weeks now, and they still surprised her. The United Nations gathered for an emergency session. The debate lasted for days. Voices were raised. Fists were slammed on tables. Some delegates walked out in protest. Others wept openly. In the refugee camp, Threnix and Marcus watched the proceedings together on a small screen. "Some of your people want us gone," Threnix observed. Marcus nodded. "Some of them are scared. I get it. This is scary. Are you scared?" Marcus was quiet for a moment. "Yeah," he admitted. "But my mom says being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means doing the right thing even when you're scared. Your mother is very wise. Don't tell her that. She'll never let me forget it." On the 5th day, the vote was held. The question was simple. Would Earth surrender the Vethkai refugees to the Dominion hegemony? The answer came as a surprise to no one who had been paying attention. 131 nations voted against surrender. 62 voted in favor. The majority had spoken. That evening, humanity broadcast its response to the Dominion probe. "This is the United Nations of Earth, speaking on behalf of the human species. We have received your demands. We have considered them carefully, and we must respectfully decline. The Vethkai people are under our protection. They have committed no crime except surviving your attempt to destroy them. We will not hand innocent beings over to be murdered." The broadcast continued. "We do not seek conflict with the Dominion hegemony. We would welcome peaceful relations with all species in the galaxy. But we will not purchase peace with the lives of those we have sworn to protect. Whatever comes next, we will face it together." The probe received the message, processed it, and transmitted it to its masters. In the refugee camp, Keshra stood before her people and told them what had happened. She told them that humans had chosen to stand with them, even knowing what it might cost. She told them that for the first time in 6 months of running, someone had refused to let them go. Many of the Vethkai wept. Some could not believe it. Others simply stood in shocked silence. Threnix found Keshra afterward, standing alone at the edge of the camp. "They are going to die for us," he said. "All of them." "Perhaps," Keshra replied. "Or perhaps not. Humans are strange creatures. They do not seem to understand when they are supposed to give up." She looked up at the sky, where the Dominion probe hung invisible but present. The hegemony has never encountered a species like this. They rule through fear. They expect surrender from those weaker than themselves. They do not know what to do with people who refuse to be afraid. Are the humans not afraid? "Oh, they are terrified," Keshra said. "I have seen it in their faces, heard it in their voices. They know what is coming. They know they cannot win. And they are standing firm anyway." She turned to look at Threnix, her compound eyes reflecting the stars. "I have traveled the galaxy for 40 years. I have met thousands of species. I've never seen anything like these humans. They may be primitive. They may be weak by galactic standards. But there is something in them that the Dominion does not have. Something that cannot be measured in ships or weapons." "What is it?" Threnix asked. Keshra was quiet for a long moment. "Hope," she said finally. "Stubborn, defiant, unreasonable hope. They look at impossible odds and choose to believe they can win anyway. It is foolish. It is irrational. And I am beginning to think it might be the most powerful force in the universe." Above them, the stars turned slowly. Somewhere in the darkness, a fleet of warships was being assembled. Humanity waited. Thrn stood at his matriarch's side and wondered. If perhaps the humans were right, perhaps hope was enough. Perhaps courage could triumph over cruelty. He was about to find out. To be continued. Refugees. Crash landed on Earth by mistake. Humanity refused to let them leave Part 4. The fleet arrived exactly when the Dominion had promised it would. Human telescopes tracked their approach. 12 massive warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system. Each one was larger than anything humanity had ever built. Each one carried enough weapons to reduce a continent to glass. Fleet. Commander Voshrath stood on the bridge of his flagship and looked at the small blue planet in the distance. This assignment was beneath him. A primitive world with no fleet, no shields, no weapons worth mentioning. He had conquered dozens of species more advanced than this. This would be nothing more than a demonstration. He opened communications. "People of Earth, your time has expired. You have failed to deliver the Vethkai criminals. As promised, your civilization will now be destroyed. Surrender the refugees immediately, and I will spare your population centers. Continue to resist, and you will watch your cities burn one by one. You have 6 hours to comply. He closed the channel and settled back to wait. The primitives would break. They always did, but humanity did not respond with surrender. They responded with something Commander Voshrath had not expected. They responded with everything. Every news channel on Earth began broadcasting the same story at the same moment. The Vethkai, their homeworld, the genocide, the months of running, the 7 civilizations that had turned them away, and the one that had not. Commentators spoke in dozens of languages. Survivors were interviewed. Keshra herself appeared on screens around the world, her alien face becoming familiar to billions of humans overnight. They came to us with nothing, one broadcaster said. They asked only for the chance to survive, and we said yes. That is who we are. That is what it means to be human. Social media exploded. The story spread faster than any event in human history. Within hours, the entire planet knew about the refugees, the threat, and what their leaders had chosen to do, and then they started moving. It began with a few dozen people walking toward the refugee camp in Canada, then hundreds, then thousands. They came from the nearby towns first, then from the cities, then from across the country. They came from the United States and Mexico. They booked flights from Europe and Asia and Africa and South America. They came with signs in every human language. They came with blankets and food and medical supplies. They came with their families, their children, their elderly grandparents. They formed a wall of bodies around the refugee camp. Director Chen watched the crowds grow from her command center. Her eyes were wet with tears she refused to shed. "What are they doing?" Keshra asked, standing beside her. "They're standing with you," Chen replied. "If the Dominion wants to kill you, they'll have to kill all of us first." Marcus came to find Threnix in the camp. He pushed through the crowds of humans until he found his friend. "What is happening?" Threnix asked. "Why are all these people here?" "Because you're not alone," Marcus said simply. "You were never alone. You just didn't know it yet." He took Threnix's clawed hand in his soft human one. "Come on. I want you to see something." He led Threnix through the camp and into the crowds beyond. Humans parted to let them pass, some reaching out to touch Threnix gently as he walked by. Not with fear, not with disgust. With solidarity, they emerged at the front of the crowd, where an elderly woman stood holding a sign. Her hair was white, her skin dark, and weathered with age. Her sign read simply, "Never again." "This is Rosa," Marcus said. "She's 93 years old. Her grandparents escaped something called the Holocaust. It was a genocide like yours. Humans killing other humans because they were different." Rosa looked at Threnix with eyes that had seen too much and understood too deeply. "Someone should have stood for my family," she said quietly. "Someone should have said no. They did not. But we can say it now. We can say it for you." Threnix felt something crack open inside him. All the months of fear, all the running, all the rejection. It poured out of him in a sound he had not made since he was a hatchling. He was crying. Marcus put an arm around him and let him cry in orbit. Commander Voshrath received intelligence reports about what was happening on the surface. He studied the images of millions of humans gathering around the refugee camp. He read the broadcasts being transmitted from every corner of the planet. Something cold settled in his stomach. "Begin weapons charge," he ordered. "Target an unpopulated area for the demonstration strike. These primitives need to learn that their defiance is meaningless." His weapons officer obeyed. Energy built in the flagship's main cannon. In moments, a mountain range on a northern continent would cease to exist. The humans would see their helplessness and surrender. The countdown began. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Commander. New contacts on long-range sensors. Voshrath spun toward the tactical display. Impossible. There were no other fleets in this sector. The nearest Dominion reinforcements were weeks away, but the contacts were real. Hundreds of them. Emerging from faster-than-light travel all around the system, ships of every size and configuration, ships bearing the markings of species from across the galaxy, ships that had been watching Earth's broadcasts. "What is this?" Voshrath demanded. His communications officer looked up with fear in his eyes. "Commander, we are receiving transmissions from the approaching fleet. They identify themselves as the Galactic Observation Coalition. They say they are here to witness." "Witness what?" "They say they are here to witness how the Dominion hegemony treats a species that cannot fight back but refuses to surrender. They say every action we take will be recorded and broadcast to every corner of the galaxy." Voshrath stared at the tactical display. The Coalition ships were positioning themselves around the system. Observers from 17 different civilizations, species the Dominion had threatened, conquered, or bullied for centuries. They were not attacking. They were just watching, recording, making sure the entire galaxy saw what happened next. "Sir," his tactical officer said quietly, "if we fire now, every subjugated world will see it. Every species we've conquered will see that resistance is possible, that the Dominion can be defied." Voshrath understood. The hegemony ruled through fear, the belief that resistance was futile. If that belief crumbled, rebellions would erupt across 100 systems. One primitive world's defiance could cost them more than 1,000 battles. He looked at the small blue planet below him, at the millions of beings gathered around 3,000 refugees, at the fleet of witnesses surrounding his own. For the first time in his career, Fleet Commander Voshrath did not know what to do. On the surface, Threnix stood with Marcus and watched the sky. Somewhere up there, the decision was being made. Life or death. Destruction or survival. "Whatever happens," Marcus said quietly, "I'm glad I met you." Threnix looked at his human friend. This strange, soft, stubborn creature from a small blue world that had changed everything. "I am glad too," he said. They stood together and waited for the universe to decide their fate to be continued. Refugees. Crash-landed on Earth by mistake, humanity refused to let them leave part. 5. The Dominion fleet hung in orbit for 3 days. 3 days of silence. 3 days of waiting. 3 days in which the entire galaxy watched to see what would happen next. "Commander?" Voshrath sent message after message to Dominion High Command. He explained the situation, the primitive world that refused to surrender, the witnesses who had gathered to watch, the impossible choice before him: fire and spark rebellions across the hegemony, retreat and show weakness that would be exploited for generations. On the 4th day, High Command gave their answer. The Dominion fleet withdrew. They did not announce their departure. They simply turned their massive warships away from Earth and accelerated toward the edge of the solar system. One by one, they jumped to faster-than-light travel and disappeared into the void. "Commander." Voshrath transmitted one final message before he left. "This is not over. The Dominion does not forget. We do not forgive. One day, when your witnesses have gone and the galaxy has forgotten your defiance, we will return, and there will be no mercy." Then he was gone. On Earth, the news spread like wildfire. People wept in the streets. Celebrations erupted in every city. The crowds around the refugee camp did not disperse. Instead, they grew larger. United in victory and relief, Threnix found Keshra standing alone at the edge of the camp, staring at the sky where the Dominion fleet had been. Her compound eyes reflected nothing now but empty darkness and distant stars. "We survived," he said.
"Oh."
"Yes," she replied. "Because of them." She gestured toward the crowds of humans. Millions had come. Millions had stood between the Vethkai and destruction. Millions had said no to an empire that had never heard that word before. "I do not understand them," Keshra admitted. "I've studied them for months now. I have learned their history, their languages, their customs. But I do not understand how a species can be so cruel to itself and yet so kind to strangers." Threnix thought about this for a long moment. Perhaps, he said slowly, they learned from their cruelty. Perhaps they hurt each other so much that they decided to stop. And now they protect strangers, because they remember what it felt like to be the ones needing protection. Kashra looked at him with something like pride. "When did you become so wise?" "I had a good teacher," Threnix said. "A human boy who refused to be afraid of me." The Galactic Observation Coalition invited representatives from Earth to meet aboard their flagship. Director Chen went, accompanied by Keshra and a small delegation of human and Vethkai diplomats. The coalition chamber was vast, filled with beings from dozens of different species. They came in every shape and size imaginable. Some had scales, others had fur, others had no solid form at all. All of them watched as the humans and Vethkai entered. A being that looked like a living crystal spoke first. "We have recorded everything that happened here. Your broadcasts, your defiance, the Dominion's retreat. This record will be preserved and shared with every civilization in the galaxy." Director Chen nodded. "We appreciate that. But we didn't do this to be recorded. We did it because it was right." A murmur ran through the assembled species. Several looked uncomfortable. "We must confess something," another being said. This one was tall and thin, with luminous blue skin. "Many of us were approached by the Vethkai during their flight. Many of us refused to help them. We were afraid of the Dominion. We told ourselves it was not our problem." The being lowered its head. "We watched your world stand against the hegemony, and we felt shame. You have nothing. No fleet, no weapons, no experience with galactic politics. And yet, you did what we were too afraid to do." Director Chen was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was gentle. "Fear is not something to be ashamed of. We were afraid too. But we have learned, painfully and slowly, that fear is not an excuse. That doing nothing is a choice. That we will be judged not by what we feared, but by what we did despite our fear." She looked around the chamber, meeting eyes and sensors and whatever other organs these beings use to see. "We do not ask you to be unafraid. We ask you to be brave. There is a difference." The Coalition voted that day to offer Earth Provisional Associate membership. Not as charity, but as recognition. Humanity had proven something the galaxy needed to see. That the Dominion could be defied. That fear could be overcome. That even the smallest, weakest species could stand against tyranny if they were willing to pay the price. Other things followed. Trade agreements, cultural exchanges, technology sharing. Earth would no longer be isolated. They had joined a larger universe, and that universe was watching them with new respect. But more important than any, this was the quieter change. Refugee ships began arriving at Earth. Other species who had been running from the Dominion, from persecution, from extinction. They had heard about the small blue world that did not turn away the desperate. They came hoping to find the same welcome the Vethkai had received. They found it, 6 months after the Dominion retreat. Kashra formally requested permission to establish a permanent Vethkai settlement on Earth. The request was granted unanimously. "We have been running for so long," she told the United Nations Assembly. "We had forgotten what it felt like to have a home. Your people reminded us, not just by giving us shelter, but by teaching us that home is not a place. It is the people who stand with you when standing is hard." She paused, her voice thick with emotion. "Earth is not just our refuge now. It is our home, and we will defend it as fiercely as you defended us." Threnix and Marcus enrolled in the same university that fall. Threnix studied human history. He wanted to understand how a species could experience so much darkness and still choose light. Marcus studied xenobiology. He wanted to help other species the way Dr. Okonkwo had helped. Threnix's clutch sister. They shared an apartment near campus. It was small, but it was theirs. 2 beings from different worlds, different species, different everything. Friends despite it all. Because of it all, on the anniversary of the crash landing, they stood together on a hill overlooking the valley where the ship had come down. The wreckage had been cleared now, replaced by a memorial garden where humans and Vethkai could remember what had happened there. A new ship descended through the atmosphere above them. More refugees from some distant conflict, more strangers who needed help. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we had crashed somewhere else? Threnix asked. Marcus shook his head. No, because it wouldn't have been the same. Other worlds might have helped, or they might have turned you away like everyone else. But Earth chose to stand. That's what matters. Not the luck of where you landed, but the choice we made when you did. Threnix watched the refugee ship settle toward the landing zone that had been built to receive such visitors. Humans were already gathering to welcome the new arrivals, to offer food and shelter, and the simple promise that they were not alone. Your species is still very strange, Threnix said. Marcus laughed. And you're still terrible at human humor. But we're working on it. They watched the sun set over the memorial garden, over the new settlement, over a world that had changed the galaxy by refusing to look away. Somewhere among the stars, the Dominion was still watching, still waiting. The threat had not disappeared, but neither had the courage that had defied it. Threnix had learned many things since coming to Earth, about history, about humanity, about the strange, stubborn, possible hope that lived in human hearts. But the most important lesson was simple, sometimes the smallest. Lights burn the brightest. Sometimes the ones with nothing to offer give the most. And sometimes, when the universe demands that you surrender, the only right answer is to stand firm and say no. The humans had taught him that. And now, standing beside his friend on a world he could finally call home, Threnix understood. This was what it meant to be brave. This was what it meant to be human. And this was what it meant to hope. The end.